With us is host and TikTok sensation Pattie Ehsaei, who's going to discuss some hard-hitting discussions around love, money, and everything in between. Some of our favorite topics.
I really wanted to provide a platform to teach women how to become financially independent.
How to protect yourself and grow your finances, which is something a lot of us entrepreneurs and business people want to do. Or is it proofing ourselves in case of the inevitable? Perhaps you can give us a little more info and take us down what you'd like to accomplish with this.
Every single person in a relationship should be able to be financially independent and provide for themselves. Once you have your money, how do you invest it? How do you grow it? So it's all about growing wealth and growing your career and really growing as a person as well.
And here's an insider's brief about no romance without finance. Actually, it's a hot new podcast out there that I want to bring to your attention. And it's all about taking care of yourself no matter what happens. With us is host and TikTok sensation Pattie Ehsaei, who's going to discuss some hard-hitting discussions around love, money, and everything in between. Some of our favorite topics. Hi, Pattie, and welcome to the DUrso show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Good to see you again. And I'm so excited about your podcast. It's like no romance without finance. First of all, what prompted this podcast and how did that start for you?
Yes, this podcast is something that I've wanted to do for years. And what really prompted it and the intention behind this podcast is to honor my mother. My mother found herself in a very precarious situation because she was in a mentally abusive relationship with my father because she was not able to support herself financially. And due to that, I saw how detrimental it was for her and her life. And, their relationship ended very tragically. And when I saw that, I made it my mission to do whatever I could to make sure that not another woman ended up like my mother. And I really wanted to provide a platform to teach women how to become financially independent. And, it took me years and years and years, but I finally have come to this platform, No Romance Without Finance podcast.
Well, I know already historically you are extremely successful in the business world, in the finance world. You really know your stuff. And I feel that compassion to help others that need to understand finance better and what does happen. I've seen and run into some sad stories where one spouse moves on and the other is left hanging and dangling with all the pieces. So I totally get it. And I think it's really, really needed. And I know that you're gearing this towards women, and I'm certain that men will learn from this as well, because there's two sides to the story. There's a lot to learn from that.
Sure.
And so is this about how to protect yourself and grow your finances, which is something a lot of us entrepreneurs and business people want to do? Or is it proofing ourselves in case of the inevitable? Perhaps you can give us a little more info and take us down what you'd like to accomplish with this.
Sure. I think it's a little bit of both. So yes, it is geared toward women because a lot of times it's women that find themselves in these situations because we've been brainwashed to believe that it's the man that's supposed to bring home the bacon and women are supposed to stay home and take care of the kids. And a man is supposed to provide for us and we're just supposed to, be the people that are receiving, right? So it is geared toward women, but I think it's really gender neutral because every single person in a relationship should be able to be financially independent and provide for themselves. Because when you're not, you put yourself in a very dangerous situation. Because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, money is power. And the power that money provides you is the ability to live your life the way you want to live and gives you choices. Choices to do what? Choices to live where you want to live, how you want to live, and most importantly, whether you want to stay in a relationship or not. And unfortunately, when you are reliant on somebody else for your finances, you don't have the option to leave that relationship if it's abusive, right? And a lot of times the person that's providing the money for you, whether it's the man or the woman, can use the withholding of finances as a means of control, as a means to control you. So that is why being financially independent is so important. And then I also, in this podcast, not only teach that premise of, okay, A, you have to be financially independent, but then how do you get there? Right. So then we talk about why it's important to build a career. How do you build a career? Once you're in a position, how do you leverage what you're doing at work for a promotion? How do you ask for a raise? How do you empower yourself in the workplace? All of that is important. And then we talk about, okay, once you have your money, how do you invest it? How do you grow it? So it's all about growing wealth and growing your career and really growing as a person as well.
Makes perfect sense. Boy, that is so needed. Thank you for doing this podcast. It's really good. You've got some great topics. Tell our audience about some of the topics that you discuss and some of the takeaways that they get as a result from listening to your show.
Sure. So we talk about, okay, before you get married, what are the things that you need to talk about around your finances? Finances are one of the top reasons that marriages end. And that is one of the things that people discuss the least, right? So people talk about, oh, what movies do you like? What do you like to eat? How do you like to vacation? Where do you want to live? But they don't talk about their finances. What is your credit score? What is your, they don't talk about that. It's so important, right? You laugh.
Excuse me. Hi, I like you. Would you like to go out? But first, what's your credit score?
That's so important, Tony. You know, I actually broke up with a guy that had a 520 credit score. And the reason
I understand why.
Right. And it's important because if you want to buy a house or if you want to make major purchases and you want to get a loan, if the person's credit score is 520, you're not going to be able to get a loan. Right? They're going to hinder their financial inability is going to hinder your ability to meet your financial goals. So you need to discuss those topics. So we talk about that. Then we talk about once you get into the marriage, how do you divide up the finances so everyone is financially independent, but yet you do feel like partners in a marriage? So what do you do around that? We talk about financial infidelity. How does that play into the marriage? That means when you are in a relationship or in a marriage, when you're lying to your significant other about how much money you're spending, how does that come into play? And then
I like to focus a little more on that because frankly, maybe, I was born in Sicily, Italy, so I'm just being silly here. Never heard of financial infidelity before. Is that a big point? Is that, well, tell us more about that and why that's so significant.
Financial infidelity is any time that you are spending money and you're hiding it from your significant other or spouse. So whether it's you're hiding the Amazon packages, whether you're hiding the bags that you're bringing home after you're shopping, right? Whether you have a gambling habit that they don't know about, whether you're opening up credit cards that they don't know about. So anytime that you're lying to your significant other about finances, that is financial infidelity. And it is a huge cause as to why marriages end and break up.
Thank you for explaining that. I know, and I've run into people in that scenario, and yeah, it leads to breakup. So it's something to think about if you're doing that in the audience. There's got to be a limit of what you can buy. Buy new shoes is fine. That's one thing, but then there comes a point where it's limited because it impacts house expenses, the mortgage, cars, payments, and so many other things. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but we all have our stories. So thank you for giving a little more on that.
Of course.
And another facet of your show, of your podcast, is you want to empower. Now, we talked about some of the points here, but now it's empower women, empower men, empower people.
Yeah.
Kind of, how does that work for this?
So empowering is really giving you the confidence to be the best version of yourself that you can be. So many of us have this imposter syndrome, right? We don't feel like we belong. We're not confident. So when we're at work, we don't act like we're confident. And thus, people don't treat us like we deserve the raise. People don't treat us like we deserve respect, right? We don't act like we know what we're talking about. So I talk a lot about, and I discuss a lot about how to act as if, even if you don't feel confident, act like you're confident. Act like you own the place. Walk around with your head up, your chest out. Contribute in the meetings. You have things to say. Call it out when someone disrespects you. All of that is really important. And I want to empower people to become the best versions of themselves. And it all starts with having confidence in your abilities.
Thank you. Very, very, very important. And any takeaways or successes, because this is such an important topic that
Yep.
I know that when you drill down into the details, is
Mhm.
where things get really fleshed out and people really see how vital some of this information is
Right.
and help them. Plus, you're coming from a very, let's call it a superior place. You've made it to the top in your category.
Right.
You understand a lot of the pitfalls, the shortfalls. Is that the right word? Pitfalls for sure.
Yeah. I've made Tony.
Shortcut.
Yes, you know what, Tony? I have made all the mistakes. That's why I can talk about it. Everything that I talk about are mistakes that I've made, even in relationships, right? And with my podcast, I just want to share this with the audiences. I got an Instagram message a few days ago, and this is why I do what I do. There's this woman that said that she binge listened to my podcast and she felt so empowered after listening to it that now she has the feeling and the empowerment to change her career into real estate. And she's empowered to change her life to become a better version of herself. And she never felt that before. And when I hear that, I know that I'm on the right track and I'm doing the right thing because I've never done this for likes. I almost have 1 million followers on TikTok, and it's never been about that. It's always been about helping people. And when I get messages like that my podcast is actually changing people's lives. And she told me, she goes, "You have no idea how much you changed my life." That is when I know I'm on the right track and that this podcast is something that is valuable to everybody.
That is really good. And I wanted to ask about what am I looking for? When people that are listening to this right now, all gender, some are in a relationship, some just left a relationship, some have a long-term relationship. So some people, let's take me, for example, I've been with my wife over 30 years now. So someone like me could say, "Oh, I don't need this," but wait just a second, because there are things that happen and there's different stages. Each one is
Right.
separate, whether you're beginning or you're in, or you're just dating, or you've just left a relationship.
Mhm.
There's valuable points here. And as I understand it from so far from your podcast, you cover all of these like important points that help continue your relationship,
Sure.
not just help start the relationship. So I want to make sure that distinction is there for our audience as well.
Absolutely. You grow in relationships, right? Even if you've been married for 30 years, I'm sure you understand your relationship has changed. And so there's going to be challenges. Everyone's going to change in the relationship. And each stage of the relationship requires a different perspective. So we do talk to people that are in the beginning stage of relationship, and we talk to those people, and we talk to people that have been married for 30 years, and all of a sudden something changes. All of a sudden someone has a gambling addiction that they didn't have before. All of a sudden someone has a shopping addiction, or someone loses their job, or the dynamics and the finances change. So it's not just for people that are starting, it's people that are in relationships now and how to navigate changes in those relationships, especially when it comes to finances.
And we know from the past, let me use the word madness of the past couple of years, things
Yes,
can change in a snap.
absolutely.
It happened with my show, and I thank God that I've made it through. But just all of a
Right,
sudden, boom! Sponsors, we're gonna stop. We're gonna hold off. Business
right,
shuts down. This shuts down. That shuts down.
right.
It was not fun for the entrepreneur to a degree,
Sure.
but being the entrepreneur, being the business person that we are, we learn resiliency. We learn to roll with the punches and come back, because that's why we're entrepreneurs and business people. So that really helps us come out. So I want to just make sure some of those distinctions are there for our audience on how important this is to just stay in and stay tuned. Now you have experts that you bring in that are
Yes.
very familiar with a lot of these aspects and can give more insights into financial stability, as well as dealing with the relationships, setting limits. What's your credit score? I still like that one, that little joke. Um, but tell us about some of the guests, the experts that you bring on.
Sure. We have a lot of psychologists that come on. So we have marital experts, we have investment experts. We also have people that, are experts in life that have had this happen to them. We just had an expert in life where she dated two broke dudes and how that impacted her life and how that, how detrimental that was to her. We had a sex expert come in and talk about, how finances can affect you in the bedroom. So we have experts from all over. We're actually going to have a feng shui expert that's going to come in and talk about finances and feng shui. So, money affects every aspect of your life, and every aspect of your life impacts your finances. So we explore all of it.
And speaking of your podcast, I'm sure as with other podcasts, you're all over the world. Where are some of the key places that we would like the listener to check out your shows?
Sure, you can find it anywhere you find your podcast, but Apple Podcasts, Spotify, it's all there.
All right, so you go to Apple Podcasts or you go to
Mhm.
Spotify.
Yes.
There's some of the key ones, and you type in "No Romance Without Finance."
Yes. And you can also find it on my website, pattiehsaei.com.
And I'll spell that too. That's Pattie. That's with a Y, correct? As I
No,
recall.
it's Pattie. Yes.
Pattie.
Uh-huh.
Very good
Yes.
to know. And your last name is Ehsaei.com.
Yes. Yep.
All right, one more time for us because it's a tongue twister. PattiehSaei.com.
Yes, you'll find all my media there. Yes, including my
Okay.
podcast.
Now, this is really important for you in the audience. When you go to Spotify, when you go to Apple Podcasts, please click that follow button. Please
Yes, absolutely.
join the show. You're going to like it. Hear a couple shows, check it out, put it in your routine, your playlist. I don't know the buzzwords anymore for people that play shows all the time. Just put it in your routine to listen. How often is your show out, Pattie?
It's out once a week.
Any particular day that you broadcast?
Tuesdays. It comes out every Tuesday. And by the way, it's already in one of the top 10% of all podcasts.
You're incredible. I want to learn from you.
Thanks, Tony.
Well, there you go. Okay, so Pattie Ehsaei, No Romance Without Finance. Please, once again, go to Spotify, go to Apple Podcasts. Pattie, thank you so much for telling us about this. And I really wish you lots of success on this show. We need this information. There's no doubt.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you for having me.